Hey, Shep here at Iron Anchor Cycles, and today I'm going to talk about an oil pressure gauge from Arlen Ness. This is a gauge that we just installed onto this Dyna, and we're going to go back in time and we're going to show you how we do it and give you all the steps, show you the tools that you need, and show you just how easy it is to put one of these onto your bike. But before we do that, let's talk a little bit about what it is. So, like I mentioned, this is an oil pressure gauge. It's made by Arlen Ness, and they've got a whole variety of applications for it. In this case, we're using their twin cam application, which is basically going to work on just about any twin cam motor, whether it be a Dyna, a Softail, or a bagger. They've got a fitment for it, and it's going to work really nice for you. So this is the black one. They also have one that's chrome, and they also have one that's a contrast cut, which is a little bit of both. So in our case, obviously, I mentioned we went with the black one, and you can see it here. It's really simple, just attaches with 2 bolts onto your rear rocker box. The line runs down and attaches into an adapter, and your original oil pressure switch for your oil pressure light will go back into that. So it's great, it's functional, it looks good, they work really well, and also pretty easy to read from the riding position. There are some others out there I've seen that put them, up on the handlebars, things like that. I personally think that's overkill, but having an oil pressure gauge is something that I really wish more Harleys had. For all the things that you can, get gauges for, plugging in a Power Vision or other gauges, things the ECU has in there, oil pressure to me is probably the most important one, and that's just not something that you can pull from the existing equipment on the bike, which is unfortunate, but we've got a really good solution here. So, like I said, this video is going to be a how-to and an install, and you'll be able to see us do this from beginning to end. And I should also mention, obviously the exhaust is off this bike. Taking your head pipe off is probably not necessary to do this. It happens that we had the exhaust off for another project, so we just decided to do this while it was off. Obviously it makes getting wrenches down in here a little bit easier having the pipe out of the way, but you could probably do it with the pipe there, but not necessary to take it off. So we'll go ahead and get started with the install. As always, if you're interested in learning more about the product or even buying one, there'll be a link in the description to the various applications that we've got, and you can take a look at those. So without anything else, we'll go ahead and get started. All right, we've rewound back in time, and we are now ready to install the Arlen Ness oil pressure gauge onto our Dyna here. So the first thing we're gonna do is grab the box, which has got everything we need to do inside of it, and we'll start going through that and we'll get it put on here. So the first thing, we just want to make sure we have everything. We've got our instructions and we've got a whole bunch of parts in here. So let's see what we've got. There's a couple things that you're going to need. Everything you need is in here with the exception of obviously tools and a couple of other little things. We've got, I'll grab these all together, the gauge, the cup, and the bracket, and these 3 things are going to be assembled together. We then have the oil line. We've got some replacement screws for the rocker box, and these are obviously longer to accommodate for the bracket. We've got the adapter for the oil pressure gauge, so this is going to go into the engine case. Our gauge is going to screw into the top, and then the existing oil pressure switch is going to screw back into there. And then we've got couple more things in here. We've got an adapter for the line, and then we've got a 45-degree angle adapter, which is going to be applicable on some bikes. Not this one, but if yours is one where it needs it, we'll get to that. I'll show you what that's about when we get there. And then we've got a small bracket and washer here for the oil line. So that's it. This is a pretty simple job to do, like I mentioned, and we're going to get this done right now real quick, and we're going to start off by assembling the top of this. We're going to work from the top down, so we'll start with the gauge, the housing, we'll get that put together, we'll get it attached to the bike, we'll run the line, and then we'll make the connection. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to get our oil line attached to the gauge. So first thing we need to do is put a little thread sealant onto the threads on the back of the gauge. I did mention there were a couple of things you were going to need that are not included in the box, and thread sealant is one of them. So you can use Teflon tape or something like that instead if that's what you've got. But in our case, we've got thread sealant, so that's what we're going to use. And that should do it. Just wipe off the excess there. And then we'll go ahead and attach the line to the back of the gauge. And we'll start that off by hand. Turn that in. So 7/16 wrench and a 1/2 inch wrench to tighten this. All right. And just like any other oil fitting, we want to make it tight enough that it's not going to leak, but obviously we don't need to go crazy in terms of the torque on this. Just don't want to break anything. All right, that should do it. So now that that is assembled, I'm just going to wipe off a little bit of the excess thread sealant. Okay, that looks good. And now we are going to take the cup and the bracket, and there's a little set screw that's here. I just started that in there not to lose it. We're going to take it out and put some Loctite on it. But essentially what we have to do is, I'm getting thread sealant all over everything, is put the cup into the bracket, and then the pressure gauge is going to go into the cup. And all this is going to sit in here together, and this little set screw is going to hold it all clocked in the right place and hold it from coming out. So we're going to put some Loctite on that set screw, and we're going to go ahead and put it in. Okay, that looks good. So with our set screw tightened, we've got our gauge assembled. So that's what that looks like, and this cup does a nice job of hiding, the fittings and everything back there. So now this assembly is going to mount here, and then the oil line itself is going to run down along the motor and follow the case and go down into the adapter. So our next step is going to be to take these two bolts out and then be ready to install this and put the rest of it together. Okay, so to get our gauge mounted up here, we're going to start by removing these two screws. One thing to point out, in our case, we've got ARP 12-point screws up here that we kind of used everywhere on the bike. Obviously, the kit does not come with those. These are just regular button head stainless Allen screws. So we're going to use these for now, and we're going to just go ahead and we'll get replacements for these that are going to match the rest of everything else, because that's going to bother me if we don't do that. So we know how long these are. We'll just go ahead and just swap them out when we can get our hands on a set of them. But for the time being, it's pretty simple. We'll just go ahead and get these two removed. All right, that's one. And so looking at these, you can obviously see you've got an extra, it looks about 1/4 of an inch of length on these. In order to get this out, we're definitely going to have to lift the tank. So we'll go ahead and keep taking this out. All right, so next thing we're going to do is a little bit of blue Loctite on each of these bolts. And go ahead and put the bolts into the bracket and install the assembly. And we're just going to re-torque these back to the factory spec, which I think is like 15 to 18 foot-pounds, something like that. So we'll do 16. Okay, so now we've got that in place. I feel good about that. We're going to go ahead and put the tank back down. And we'll get our tank hardware back on. So, got our gauge in place, tank's back on, making progress. The next thing that we're going to do is go ahead and, to be fair, the instructions want you to secure this line to this lifter block screw. I'm going to skip that and come back to it. I think just for my own personal peace of mind, I would rather make the connection down here to the case first, and then once that's in place, we can just move this oil line where it needs to go. And to be honest with you, I might not even make this connection here. I think it might just be a little bit better just to let it hang, but we'll see what it looks like. Okay, so our original oil pressure switch is right here with the wire connected to it. Obviously, what we're doing here is installing a gauge because this does not control a gauge. It's got a single wire coming off of here, and this is a really, really simple device. It's a switch activated by pressure, and when the pressure is above a certain amount, the circuit is open. When the pressure drops below a certain amount, that causes the circuit to close, which provides a ground to the switch, which enables. This is then a ground wire going up to your oil pressure light or to the computer to control the oil pressure light. And when that's closed, your oil pressure light will come on. So what we're obviously trying to do here is give ourselves an actual reading of the oil pressure as opposed to just knowing when it's low. So this is going to go back on because obviously we still want the functionality of our oil pressure light, but we just want the addition of the gauge. So the first thing to do is disconnect the wire, and that just pulls off. And then the next piece is going to be to take this out of the engine case. So we'll just put a wrench on there, and we'll turn this out. And I'm just going to move that wire a little out of the way. So we'll spin that, and out it comes. So you get a little oil that comes out of there. It'll stop dripping. Yeah, there you go. So you just put a rag there to catch that. It's not like going to pour out or anything like, if you open the drain plug or something like that. So there's our oil pressure switch. What I'm going to do is go ahead and clean this off, and then we'll continue with the install. I'm going to do that off camera because there's really no need for you to watch me brush this junk off the threads. So we'll do that and come right back. Okay. So we've got our threads cleaned off and just put a little sealant on there. And then we also have the adapter piece, which I mentioned, and I put some sealant on there already. So that end is going to go into the engine case, and then this is going to go into the back of the adapter, and our gauge is going to go into the top. So I'm going to start by threading this into the adapter, and then we'll put the whole thing into the engine case. So there's that, and then we'll take this side and thread that into our hole in the case, making sure that the focus is a little weird today, making sure that the hole is pointing up so that the line can connect to it. So I'm just going to put that down for a sec and just do my best to clean this out as best I can. Then we're going to get all the oil out of there, but the thread sealant we're using is supposed to be oil resistant, so hopefully it won't be a problem. Okay. So I'm hoping I can get one more turn out of this. Okay, perfect. So that's nice and snug, and we've got our hole pointed in the correct direction. So let's just clean off that excess thread sealant that worked its way out of there. And we're good to go. All right, so the next piece, obviously we've got a female here and we've got a female here as well. So there's a little adapter piece that's going to thread in. And so this side is what's going to go into the line. And this is a compression fitting on here, or a flared fitting, I should say. And then this end is going to go into the adapter. So we'll do that. One thing to point out, I mentioned this little 45-degree adapter. On the twin cam B motors, which would be for a softail, the orientation of this is different. And so the use of this 45-degree piece will be necessary. But on the A motors, the Dynas and baggers, obviously you don't need this piece. So we'll go ahead and get this connected and get it put in. All right, not sure if my camera just turned off or not, but we just put the adapter for the line into the case adapter and threaded that down, and then just tightened that up with a wrench. And I'm just now wiping away the excess thread sealant. Okay, and then the final step in the connection is to go ahead and attach the line onto the flared fitting here. No sealant on this type of a connection. It'll seal just fine without it. So start that on, and then just going to go ahead and tighten that down. And that should do it. So that is all tight now. So our final step here, just got to remember to reconnect, make the electrical connection here for the oil pressure switch, and we're good to go. So, not sure if this is all visible. Let's back out a little bit here. So you can see what I'm seeing and see what everyone thinks. So that's our setup, and I'm on the fence about, so this was the little bracket piece, and this is meant to go on here, and this is meant to then hold this line down here on that screw. I personally am maybe of the mind that it would be better to just let it be free. I'm just trying to decide what's going to look better. You see it less this way, with it kind of running up under the air cleaner, but maybe it's just a little cleaner to have it come down. I don't know. Might have to live with it for a little while and see how it is. But in any event, that is just about it for the installation. Obviously, in our case, we've got an exhaust to put back on, but that was not necessary for the install. It's probably easier to do this with the pipe off, but you could probably do it with the pipes on. So that's where we're at. What we've got to do from here is go ahead and just test it out, make sure there's no leaks, and we should be good to go. But like I said, not a hard installation, not a long installation, just basic tools, and you get yourself a really, really useful gauge that I wish more Harleys had. So that's going to do it. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us. Otherwise, keep wrenching, keep riding, and we'll see you next time.